All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. And today, guys, as promised, we have a super special guest. Now, it's been a little while since we had a special guest here in the Childlike Faith podcast. So I'm super excited. You guys know we do this live. The majority of you guys watch this on the replay. So thank you so much. Several of you will be getting this in your email, and the majority of you will probably watch this on podcast, Apple, or hear it on Apple and podcast or on the YouTube channel. So thank you guys for joining me. Guys, today I'm not going to take up much time. I'm going to go kind of get straight into it. But this gentleman that we've had, you saw the post that we had a guest speaker. And this is a Hall of Fame motivational speaker. And this is a major win for the Cool Kids Club. And I believe it's almost by divine appointment for you Christian entrepreneurs that are going to be coming to the public speaking workshop on April 26th here in the East Texas area. So we're going to make this episode called the Faith Your Fears Firestorm, full of wisdom, encouragement, and strategy. Because right here, we're going to have Chris Widener. He's in the waiting room. I'm fixing to unleash him on the Cool Kids Club. And he's going to be sharing with us a lot of the wisdom that he's garnered over the years, the importance of communication, influence, and stepping boldly into the marketplace. Because your job as a host really is just, my job is just simply to kind of facilitate, bring you guys in front of people like this that's going to help us to grow our business, to impact other people's lives for the better, guys. So again, welcome back to the Playground of Purpose, where the childlike faith meets grown-up kingdom business. And today's guest, whoo, baby, I don't think he needs an introduction, but in case he does, he's going to get one anyway. Because if you've ever wondered what it takes to go from overlooked to unforgotten on the stage or in your business presentation, our guest today is going to help us face our fears and own our voice. Chris Widener, welcome to the stage.
Hey, Johnny, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Man, I'm so pumped. There's your bio is just packed, man. We could have gone through half of the show. Hall of Fame motivational speaker, one of the top 50 speakers in the world, worked with legendary speakers like Ziglar, who this whole thing is powered by, right? And then Jim Rohn, author, leadership, entrepreneur. You're not just a speaker, man. You're like a living legend. Tell us about yourself.
Well, how far back do you want me to go?
Man,
it's been an interesting life. I turn 59 next week, and you start creeping up on the zero dates, and you start thinking about your life and everything you've gone through. And it's been a great life. It's been amazing. Lots of fun things, lots of negative things, lots of hardships, lots of blessings. Life started out pretty good for me. My dad, in 1969, I was born in 66. So when I was 3 years old, my dad made $90,000 in 1969. Now, you got a lot of Americans today that would say, sign me up for the $90,000 a year deal, let alone in 1969. And in 1970, at the age of 41, long story short, he died of cancer. But he had very little life insurance. It was gone in months. My mom had to sell our house that recently sold for $3.8 million. She had to sell it because she couldn't afford a $400 a month mortgage payment. And so that began a downward spiral, 28 homes, 11 different schools, shipped off to live with relatives twice, once in the 4th grade, once in the 9th grade, started drugs in the 6th grade, made my money growing up, betting the horses at Long Acres Horse Track outside of Seattle, which doesn't even exist anymore. And just, crazy lifestyle, crazy stuff I was involved in. The first time the feds ever showed up on my doorstep, I was in the 6th grade. Because we had blown up a post box, a mailbox with a big keg of black rifle powder. I mean, we were going in the wrong direction fast. And the summer before my senior year of high school, I was spending the night with a buddy, and his mom burst into the bedroom at about 8 a.m. on Sunday morning, and she said, "Get up, we're going to Sunday school." And I literally I literally did not know what the term meant, because I grew up in a completely irreligious home. And I just didn't even know what Sunday school meant. She could have said, "Get up, we're going to gobbledygook." It would have meant the same thing to me. And so I ended up going to this little tiny Lutheran church Sunday school in North Bend, Washington. It's called Mount Si Lutheran Church. It's at the corner of 8th and Ogle. I'm still determined to make them famous. But so anyway, we get there, and there's this youth pastor there, and he was a good old boy from Montana. And I always tell people he had two things I needed at that stage of my life. Number one, he had size 11 cowboy boots, if you know what I mean. And number two, he told me that I had a purpose in my life, that God had a purpose in my life, and told me about God. I became a Christian the summer before my senior year. I was being recruited to go play basketball, but I ended up going to a little tiny Bible college. Now, luckily, they had a basketball team. We played in this Bible college league or something like that. I'll tell you, I saw more fighting in the Bible college league than I do watching the NCAAs. But anyway, ended up becoming a youth minister for 3 years, 88 to 91. And then I was a church planter in Seattle. I started my first church at the age of 25. Started 3 churches out of that church. Well, 2 more. So total of 3 churches. 2 of those 3 churches are still going. They average probably a couple thousand people on Sunday mornings. And then in 2002, I felt like God wanted me to go and become a professional speaker. So I did. And within 7 years, God just opened up every single possible door that he could to help me in that business. I started out by ghostwriting for John Maxwell. I wrote his nationally syndicated column for 2 years. And then Jim Rohn called me, and I spent 7 years working with Jim Rohn. I wrote his last book, a book called The 12 Pillars. And then Zig Ziglar called and asked if I would co-host his television show. And if people are still interested, they go to YouTube and type in Ziglar True Performance. And I think there's probably still 8 or 10 episodes up there. So, but anyway, been an interesting life. I achieved all the things I wanted to achieve in the speaking world. You know, as you mentioned, Hall of Fame speaker, 2,500 speeches all over the world. Success Magazine named me 2 years ago, named me one of the top 10 sales speakers in the world. Global Gurus just about a month and a half ago named me the 17th top sales speaker in the world. So lots of great accolades. It's taken me all over the world. It's been wonderful. But one of the things that I always felt, having been a pastor and then a secular public speaker, I just realized that I was leaving one part of the recipe out most of the time. You ever ask somebody for a recipe, like you eat the food and you're just like, oh man, this is great. I need your recipe. And they give it to you and it doesn't taste the same way when you make it because they're greedy and they leave one key element out. Well, that's how I felt, teaching people about success. And yet in a secular situation, you can't really get super Christian on them. And so about a year ago, I was shaving. Now, I've had amazing mentors growing up. When I was a youth minister, I had 3 or 4 guys. I was in a very, very, very rich town in northern New Jersey. And these guys that were our elders, they were like our titans of industry. My first business mentor was the CEO of Mars Candies, just a little $40 billion a year company.
Yeah.
And so I had lots of great mentors growing up, and Zig and Jim and John and those guys. Well, anyway, about a year ago when I was 58, I was shaving and I looked in the mirror and I felt like God said, "You're the old man now." And I knew exactly, like instantaneously, I knew what that meant. I'm the age that a lot of these guys were. Zig and Jim were a little bit older than me, but this is about the age that I met John Maxwell. I'm the age now that they were when I was the kid. And so I decided to close down my businesses. I sold one business, closed one business, and gave half of one business back to my partner. And I started a 501c3. And so now for the rest of my life, I'm going to be working with Christian entrepreneurs, organizations. I do coaching for, if I have an avatar, it's men, Christian men, 30 to 45, but I coach everybody. I coach men, I coach women, I coach older people, younger people, but kind of the vision I have in my mind is the ability to just mentor these guys. And I'll tell you, as soon as I made that decision in my mind, Johnny, I had a really interesting thing happen. And then I'll tell you this and then I'll quiet down a little bit. But I thought about this, less a coach per se, but more of a mentor or a confidant. And it's the difference between knowledge and wisdom. I've always had a lot of knowledge, but at the end of your life, you now have wisdom. And my son asked me the other day, he said, "What's the difference between knowledge and wisdom?" I said, "Well, I'll give you 2 examples. Take a 30-year-old basketball coach in the NBA. He's brand new, first coaching job. He gets in the NBA, coached college for a little bit. Now he's in the NBA. That guy has knowledge. We know he has knowledge or he wouldn't be a coach in the NBA, but he's 30. Well, one night he's coaching against a 65-year-old guy who's been in the league for 35 years. And they come down to the final seconds and there's going to be a play run. And the coach, the young coach, out of his knowledge, knows what play to run or he knows what this guy's going to run. And then this guy, because he's wise, he understands that this guy's operating out of knowledge and thinks he's going to run this play. So he runs another play. And it's knowledge applied. I'll give you one other example. My son would say, well, give me a better example. I said, okay, here's a better example. If your neighbor builds his fence 2 inches onto your property line, you know that it's illegal. You know that you could have him redo that fence. You know you could go to the building department. You know what the law says. You know what the surveyor said. You know that he's 2 inches over on your line and that you could have him take it down. But the wise side of you says, but then I'm going to have an angry neighbor for the next 30 years, and the 2 inches really doesn't bother me. That's the difference between knowledge and wisdom. And so I had this young guy call me up. The very first guy after I decided to do this calls me up, never heard of him before, met me on LinkedIn, and we get on the phone, and I'm like, how old are you? And he said 40. I said, yeah, how long you been married? 12 years. How's your marriage? Fantastic. Date night every week. Get along. No problems. How many kids? 3 kids under the age of 8. You know, how's your relationship with the kids? Great. I coach his baseball team. I go to her dance recitals, you know, great. So, okay, perfect. How much money do you make? He said, I make $750,000 a year and I get a $200,000 corporate bonus every year. So it's about a little under $1 million. I go, okay, great. How much debt do you have? None. I said, okay, what's your net worth? $4 million. And so I said, okay, you know, great. I'm looking at him so I can tell he's in good shape. And I said to him, I said, look, I may be cutting my throat here on selling you a coaching program, but I'm like, you're the guy that all of my coaching clients want to become. Like, this is the goal. You know, being in that state in your marriage, your family, your relationships, your money, your debt, you know, that's the goal for most people.
Yeah.
And so I basically told him, yeah, you shouldn't hire me. And then what he said next confirmed everything that I feel like God's been leading me to do. He said, yeah, but Chris, you know what I've never had? And I said, what's that? And he said, I've never had an older man, a mentor who I could just come to and ask questions of. And I said, and he said, if I could hire you and show up and I'll drive the conversation, I just want to be able to talk to somebody who's been there and done that before. And I said, so you want to pay me so you can call me and you can ask me questions? He said, yep. And I said, done. Here's the bank account. And he sent the money and away we went. And I've had 5 or 6 calls with him now, and great guy. And it's always just free flowing conversations. My calls are only supposed to go about an hour, but 2 or 3 calls ago, we went like 2 hours and 15 minutes. So I'm really passionate about helping the younger generation Christians navigate life and business. And the last thing I'll say is this: you say life and business. Yeah, they're both tied together. And the easiest example is, well, you know, I need business coaching. I don't need marriage coaching. Really? Have you ever had a fight with your wife at 8 a.m. and then gotten in the car and tried to work at 9 a.m.? Your marriage affects your work. It makes you less efficient. You get in an argument, you don't settle it before you have to go to work. Now, all day long, your brain isn't on work. Your brain is on your wife or your husband. And so coaching is best when done from a Christian perspective, I believe, in a holistic perspective, right? It's not just your business. It's your business, your marriage. Well, I have marriage problems. Okay. So why? My husband works till 9 o'clock every night. Well, that's a business problem and a marriage problem. You know, and so I'm excited about this new stage in my life. It's been a great career. I still do speaking engagements. Obviously, if Microsoft's going to call me and offer me 40 grand, I'm going to show up. But you know, for the most part, putting on prayer summits. I did my first one-day prayer summit. It's for men. Last December 7th, we had 35 guys fly in from all over the country. And we're doing our next one June 7th here in Chattanooga. It's just one day, 8 a.m. till 5 p.m., teaching on prayer, a lot of prayer, individual prayer, praying for each other, that kind of stuff, and really, truly life transformational. So that's a long story to tell me about yourself. Sorry about that. Looks like we froze up, Johnny.
All right, you there?